Okay, some 27 people have actually joined this session so far, 26, 27. Uh, and let's start with the today's session. I will just briefly provide you with information about the origin of the idea to actually have this advanced level training in our focus. As you probably know, we are all most of us are partners on Innovation as a Service project, which is funded by the Transnational Program of Cooperation of Interreg Danube, involving countries from the Danube region. And within the project, and in the very, let's say, moment or phases of the preparation of the project, the topic of living lab and role functioning of the living labs is recognized, identified, and pre-selected as the topic of interest for the most of the partners, and we kind of create a commitment that we are going to be focused on the living lab and try to make the most of it within the capacities of Innovation as a Service project. This means that that's the reason why we have actually this uh, advanced level training today. But it is also important to stress that this is the kickoff meeting, the kickoff, let's say, event for one of the pilot activities which are planned and which are in the process of implementation within the Innovation as a Service project. Namely, our partners from Hungary and from Czech Republic, uh, Pan Business Network (PBN) from Hungary, and the Regional Innovation Center of the Karlovy Vary region from Czech Republic are actually participants of one pilot within the project, which is concretely devoted to the living labs. So within their pilots, there are pilot activities which will be in implementation in following months. They will try to transform and to adapt the spirit of living labs, this quadruple helix approach to the innovation, quadruple helix approach to the innovation process, and they will try to, let's say, gather or organize themselves or get the confirmation of the current organization as that it is in line with the let's say with the methodology of the living lab. Today's session is going to be very interesting. We have some interesting lecturers, interesting expert speakers. In this introductory part, I will just mention them in the order of their appearance during the today's session. Uh, we will start with the group of experts, lecturers from our partner organization, which is the Vorarlberg University of Applied Sciences, where we have a team of people which will present you with the provide you introduction on the basics and theoretical framework of living labs, including the step-by-step guide on how to establish a living lab and methods. So we expect Mr. Jens Schumacher, Mr. Martin Dobler, and Ms. Sylvia Kessler. I think that they already joined us, and they are going to be present during the first lecture today, first presentation. Then we will follow the agenda in terms that Mr. Francesco Molinari, which is an independent researcher and policy advisor, I think that he already joined us. He will have his presentation on the subject of the title of the presentation is Sustainable Living Labbing. So he will provide you with some very interesting information from the practical point of view, and basically provide you with those practical hints which you should know in if you're having an interest to establish or to be organized on the by using the living lab approach. some success stories we can also expect within his presentation. Then, as a third presentation of the day, will be our colleague from the Innovation Technology Cluster. He's a senior food system expert. It's Mr. Sasha Strauss. The title of his presentation will be Greenpoint, How to Establish and Run a Successful Living Lab. So as you can see from the agenda, it is our intention also to provide you with some really practical information on successful living labs which are already functioning, and as a main idea also to support mentioned pilot activity. Then afterwards, as the fourth presentation of the day, we will have Mr. Francesco Filippi, which is Operations Director and Quality Manager in Musso Foundation. He will provide you with a interesting lecture on the behavioral nudges and cultural interventions in terms of innovative pathways for public policy. So basically, he will provide us with very interesting interesting methodology of so-called nudges as a tool which can influence the citizens' behavior, and as a tool which could be largely used and largely exploited if you are considering if you're considering an opening or establishing a living lab in your region or in your location. So for starters, that will be like some basic introduction from our side. So our plan is was to start with at 1300 hours. Our plan is to finish by 1700 hours tops, so maximum. So after each presentation, we will have a round of sessions, Q&A sessions, question and answers, and you can note your question and raise your question after the finish of the presentation of each lecturer. And I have to say that this lecture is being recorded. This session will be added to the pile of trainings which Innovation as a Service has already performed. If I'm not mistaken, more than 12 trainings were organized so far. I think this is the 13th, maybe 14th in a row. And creating a interesting video library of trainings and webinars, which will be all part of Innovation as a Service Academy deliverable, which is planned to be adopted, developed, and finished by the end of this project, which is at the end of June next year. So without any further ado, I would like to call our partners from Vorarlberg University to start with their initial presentations, and we are looking forward to hear from you.
Thank you, Goran. Then we will start. I'll try to share my presentation. So you should see now my presentation, right? Okay. Good, then let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our presentation about how to establish a living lab. I will show you our agenda for today. So we would like to talk a little bit about who we are. Then we would spotlight innovation and what are living labs. And at the end, we would like to talk about how to establish a living lab. And after this session, I have to put your faces on another corner here. So after this session, you will be able to explain what living labs are and how they operate as real-life innovation ecosystems. You will be able to describe the structure, main concepts and principles of living labs, and also you're able to distinguish between different living lab settings. You know, the key success factors to design and manage a living lab, and how to apply core methods and tools used in living labs. And who are we? We are your hosts today in this first session. It's Professor Dr. Jens Schumacher. He's the head of the Research Center Business Informatics, and he's a lecturer and expert on living labs. It's Martin Dobler. He's also a lecturer here and researcher. And my name is Silvia Ketzler. I'm also here at the Research Center Business Informatics. So, who are we? Where are we? We are in Vorarlberg. Vorarlberg is located in the heart of Europe, in the west of Austria. And our region is characterized by one part urban centers, but you can compare it to big cities like Vienna or Salzburg. And on the other hand, we have large rural areas and a lot of untouched nature. It's really beautiful here. You can see it in the background of Martin, that there are mountains, and autumn is in its full bloom here. And our central location here is very good for us because we have efficient transport connections, and it's an ideal hub for European travel. We have a very strong, historically grown, predominantly family-owned enterprises and an industry here. And we here at the Vorarlberg University of Applied Sciences, we are an important research partner in the region. So this brings us to the FHV, that's the short form for Vorarlberg University of Applied Sciences, the German version. So we are founded in 1994. We were 30 years last year, and we celebrated that. We have 25 study programs, around about 1,600 students and 350 employees working in research as lecturers or also in administration. We have research facilities here, research centers and research groups, and we work together with many institutions here in the region, but also internationally, and also have partners there. Our key elements of our service here is to provide efficient and practice-oriented instructions for all the students here, that we follow immediate connection between research and studies, and also to our industry partners. We are very well aware of that our students are the future leaders of the region, and so it's very important for us to have good partners and to support the partners here in the region. We provide an open learning environment and an international learning atmosphere. We are a partner in the RAN-EU network, a network of universities in Europe. So let's start with the topic innovation here. A short introduction. What do you see? In the first picture, you see Fifth Avenue in New York, around about 1900. And you can see here, these are all horse-drawn carriages and just one automobile. And just a few years later, at the same spot, another picture. And what do you see here? There's no horse anymore. So this is the same street, look completely different. Now crowded with cars, and the horse-drawn carriages had almost disappeared. So this example vividly illustrates the tremendous potential of innovation. And innovation does not merely change products or technologies, it transforms entire markets, industries, and ultimately society as a whole. And that is why it is essential for companies today not to leave innovation to chance, but to manage it systematically. I would like to show you something else. Here you can see the Global Innovation Survey from 2024 from Boston Consulting Group. And they found out that leaders feel the pressure for change, and they also see the opportunity in innovation. As you can see here, 83% of the participants ranked innovation as top 3 priority, but only 3% feel that they are ready for that. So innovation This demonstrates that organizations need clear strategies and actionable pathways to successfully pursue innovation, to be more in this ready zone, as you can see here. In the same study, they also were asked what were the challenges they were facing in innovation, R&D, and product development. And let's see the first 5-1. So you can see here unclear or overly broad strategy, rising cost of capital, talent pool constraints, risk-averse culture, and siloed innovation. I think the last point is very important for the topic we will talk about later. So this statistic shows that there's a need to manage innovation in organizations strategically again, and that they need suitable methods to do that. But before we do that, let's take a look at how innovation occurs in organizations. So let's take a look at innovation management. First, let me be clear about the terms. What's the difference between innovation and invention? Invention, that's a new idea or creation as a result of original thinking. And innovation is this practical application of an invention, so of an idea or a creation that creates value. So to bring it to the market, that's an innovation. So innovations are new on the one hand, to the firm, to markets, to the world. They involve uncertainty. They are often complex, and they can create conflicts because they challenge old ways, push boundaries, and this happens inside the company, but also outside the company, for example, by disrupting existing markets. So now let's take a look at the different types of innovation that we can distinguish. We can classify innovation in different ways. By domain on the one hand, so what is changing? Is it a product, is it a process, a service, or business model? By trigger, what triggered it? Is it a technology push or market pull? By novelty, how new is it? Is it incremental innovation, radical, or maybe disruptive? And by scope, how far reaching is it? Is it limited to one company, or is it transformative for an entire industry? And there are different success factors for innovation that make innovation successful, in fact. So successful innovation balances individual, social, and economic dimensions. For innovation to succeed, several factors matter. A supportive organization culture, an innovation culture, for example, true novelty, and ideas that customers actually value and are important for them, market research, and a clear strategy. So how can companies ensure that all these factors come together? That's where innovation management comes in. So what is innovation management? It's the systematic planning, steering, and controlling of innovations with the goal to create economic, social, or environmental value. And typical tasks include the support of the generation of ideas, selecting the best ones, developing them further, and guiding them to the market launch. And therefore, it's important to define strategies, implement processes, and create the enabling context, measure, and learn what was happening. There's a framework from Martin which will explain this process. So here you can see innovation is not a one-time event. It requires continuous processes, feedback loops, and the ability to adapt. And leading companies build permanent structure to ensure that innovation keeps flowing. So as you can see here in orange, these are the impulses and requirements as triggers for innovation. This could be new skills, market potential, knowledge flows. And then there's a need and a goal setting which will lead to different kinds of innovation forms. You can see this in blue on this side. So this could be customer and citizen-based innovation, integrated innovation, frugal innovation, proactive innovation, or high-speed, low-risk innovation. And over all these process steps, strategic innovation management ensures that innovations are implemented in a targeted, sustainable, and value-creating manner. But when we talk about continuous innovation management or strategic innovation management, we also have to talk about the two different approaches that come up with innovations in organizations. So these two approaches are derived from literature. On the one hand, companies generate, develop, and leverage ideas in form of closed innovation, and on the other hand, in form of open innovation. So closed innovation, that means that all ideas are generated, developed, and commercialized within the company. You can see that like a funnel that's closed. So nothing from inside the companies go outside. So in innovation funnel is completely internal. Ideas enter the funnel, go through the internal evaluation and development, and only the company decides which ones reach the market. So this comes with reduced risk of knowledge diffusion, yes, and top-down control, and also technology independence to a certain extent. But also there is some kind of know-how deficit based on missing exchange with others, reduced resources, high costs. So this is the first approach. And the other approach, that's a very traditional approach, I have to say, the closed innovation one. And on the other hand, you have open innovation. So this funnel, when you imagine the funnel again, is open to external resources as well. So companies can bring in ideas, technologies, or solutions from outside partners, from startups or universities, and they can also let their own ideas be used externally. So there's when you see the funnel, there's always exchange between the outside and the inside. And this approach allows more ideas to enter the funnel, increasing the chance of a successful innovation. So ideas flow from inside to out and from outside in. There's openness for collaboration and co-creation. Yes, there is an increased coordination effort and confidentiality issues, but there's increased know-how and competence, reduced costs through improved development and risk sharing. So open innovation holds a lot of potential for organizations, and there's a need for methods to support this approach of open innovation. And this is where Living Labs come in. So what's the next step? Living Labs bridge the gap between creative ideas and sustainable implementation. They create real-life environments to create, test, and evaluate ideas and invite a variety of stakeholders for sustainable development. In this kind of open innovation approach. And now I would like to hand over to our expert for Living Labs at the FHV, Dr. Jens Schumacher, who will introduce you to the concept of Living Labs. And afterwards, Martin will show you how to establish a Living Lab with the methods. So I will stop sharing my presentation and hand over to you, Jens.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just thinking how can I get this to show the presentation? I requested a control from you, Sylvia. Have you approved that?
You can share with the button above, but okay, I can share my presentation again.
This would be great, and then I can take just control of it. Okay. So my background, maybe in the meantime, I have been working together with Francesco and some other guys in this Living Lab field, I think almost like 20 years now. And just try to request control again. Can you check that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, and we are talking obviously about these living labs and how to implement them and so on and so forth. So I will just give you a short overview. In principle, the idea when we started with our endeavor to to kind of define living labs, we were in this time where crowdsourcing was also an interesting topic, right? And we thought about how can this, and this crowdsourcing was usually used for some strange things like guessing how much marbles are in a bowl of in a glass or something like that. And but this was not really in the direction where we wanted to go. But we wanted to have more these the users of the solutions, whether this would be software solutions or whether this would be real products, to kind of get a bigger role into the development of this product and also of the innovation that is happening there. So also innovation also implies that there is somehow a money return, right? And we started with this definition here that were later on defined: user-centered open innovation ecosystem based on systematic user co-creation. So that means we take the user as a full partner, more or less on eye level, into the innovation and research process, and kind of try to, and also, I mean, and that's different to what you see when you do a user-centered design or something like that. We also take this into the real life communities and the real life user settings. And that was where we started out, and which is coming out of this book that we at some point in time edited. Um, Oops, can we go back some? Ah, yeah, great. Okay, so the whole thing started somehow with this user-centered design and these user-centered solutions that have a strong Scandinavian basis, right? And then in 1990s, this Professor Mitchell came up first with the term living lab. By that time, that was actually not really kind of tailored to services or innovation or something like that, but it was purely in the architectural sense. So he kind of built houses, and then some real users needed to move into these houses, and they tested the architectural design of these things. And we took this idea, and when we were, let's say, 20 years ago, where we said, okay, we would like to transfer this for not only for architectural living, but if you are living, for example, with your mobile phone, what are your requirements for this mobile phone? What are inventions that you would like to see? And so really kind of taking the user into this kind of thinking on how to do innovation with a product that you may own or may not own. So in principle, the big player here, and I think also one of the guys who actually made the success of this living labs, has been Veli-Pekka Niitamo, a guy from Helsinki who was working by that time as the research director of Nokia. And he had this idea, yeah, we would like to get more the information. Everybody who uses our phone as a tool, and with the software that we can put on it, we have so much possibilities, but we don't know exactly what do they really want to have. And then they started from this idea, yeah, we roll out things, and then people can use them, not, let's say, in a laboratory factory, but rather in their real life, and then identify what is working and what is not working. So what is sticking and what is not sticking. And there has been one. I mean, you have to consider this are Nokia times, right? So, for example, there was a company who kind of developed the Bible for a mobile phone, so you don't have to take the Bible with you. You have the Bible on your mobile phone, and this was not really successful. I mean, there were only very few downloads for it, and so on and so forth. But at one point in time, they switched, for example, and someone said, "Yeah, we need the same thing, but not for the Bible, but for the Quran." And they switched then and developed the whole thing with the Quran. I mean, it's in principle just a transfer of this text, and this was immensely successful because obviously, I mean, the people who are, let's say, living by the Quran do more often have to read the Quran and so on and so forth. So from that point of view, that was much more. I mean, the same technological solution, but a different application which were triggered by the users actually led to this hugely successful deployment of the Quran in these relatively old Nokia phones. So these kind of things are user triggered, and we wanted to harvest more of these possibilities with the introduction of these living labs. And by actually thinking about from the beginning, every idea somehow starts with the user and ends with the user, and every step in between are actually coined by the user. And at the end, what is happening, we are deploying these things in a real life environment, also minimum viable products, prototypes, and so on and so forth, and they actually lead then to these kind of solutions. And that was kind of the starting point. So in principle, when we are looking at these living labs, they are quite dynamic because there's different people involved in it, also different nationalities, different settings, also let's say cultural settings. They are always user-centered, and the idea is always not to kind of go with your idea what the engineer thinks is the right way, but rather kind of think about what let's say the user would like to see. And this has been, let's say, is in a stark contrast to what you see, for example, when Steve Jobs was doing innovation, because he always said the user can't engineer a telephone, and that's or a mobile, and that's most probably right, but he can have at least certain expectations where we can see whether we can met or whether we can't met them. And so this is somehow this real life context and the understanding about this, how realistic it is to make certain things. And it's also, let's say, in stark contrast to if you have this lead user approach where you say, yeah, I take one user who is usually the guy who is specifically let's say a technology nerd and who is trying to push the boundaries. But what we need for this, in order to have services and products that are successful in the market, we need to have the average user, right? And what we are trying to do is with these living labs to kind of leveraging between, let's say, the lead user part, and on the other hand, let's say the idea of Steve Jobs, we don't have any users at all, right? And that was kind of our starting point there. And obviously, it's when you are going from what Silvia explained from, let's say, the closed innovation to open innovation, the process gets obviously more challenging. You always have the problem that you would like to focus on certain things, and you need to kind of govern the process much better than what you do when you have a closed process. And but the basics of this is somehow that you bring these products or these services or these prototypes early to the user for him to explore what is possible with this, to experiment, to evaluate, and then finally to also innovate, because he will give you some ideas back that you most probably didn't have in the beginning. So core elements of these things are, first of all, how is this organized? So what kind of entities are participating in this? Who is promoting this innovation? And then obviously you have a setting, which is a living lab, and then you can have inside this settings different projects. So for example, if you look to the living lab in Amsterdam, then this is something that has been established 15 years ago. And in the meantime, there have been all different products and services that has been developed inside of this living lab with different people. So there's always kind of a certain, let's say, fluid flexibility of this lab. But at the end, you have let's say, a common kind of framework where you would like to test certain ideas, certain products, certain services. Yeah? And the whole thing, as already kind of mentioned, is very much on this co-creation process. So we are not there is not somebody like Steve Jobs sitting there and inventing the iPhone, but rather you are kind of talking with the customer, you are looking over the concepts over it, and you start from the beginning with this cooperation just right from the start. The benefits are obviously, I mean, that is very cost efficient to get access to this user data and to the experience. So you don't have to do long market researches or something like that. So you're already talking with the guys who will at the end hand over the money for the service or for the product. You have a better learning and dialogue with these people. The user feedback, especially in the engineering phase, allows obviously to change the product early. So the later you are in the product development cycle, the costlier any changes are. So it's important to kind of make things first right. Yeah? So this is the first thing right. That's kind of the baseline for it. And the user influences also the development process, kind of bringing complex positive effects on this complex problem solving issue, especially if you feel, okay, maybe you are working on some, or this is our experience to some extent, you are working on certain nitty-picky details that are maybe not even relevant for the user. So this has been often seen in this kind of setting. The user perceive product and service is at the end more functional because he has the functions that he really needs. It is a better collaboration, and it unlocks, on the other hand, also this unique knowledge that most probably in the minds of the engineer and the technicians are not present. So this is, in principle, the stuff is quite practical and adaptable, and impact innovations. This is what we are aiming for. We need this enhanced community engagement and co-ownership, and this is and the solution to highly relevant to community needs, right? The problem is still, if you ask different people, the co-ownership, yeah, because you are kind of harvesting the ideas of the users in the living lab, right? So the question is a little bit, so to which extent to whom belongs the IPR, but in the meantime, we have developed certain contracts also for the user so that we can make sure that the IPR belongs to the company. Otherwise, than that, we had in the beginning a lot of discussions about who actually owns the IPR of, let's say, an innovation that comes out of a living lab approach. The core concepts. So we are talking interaction, which means, and when we are doing living labs, we do product and service development. We bring them to the customer in their real life setting. This is the baseline of it, right? And we are not doing these development only within the company. So it is actively rolled out. The context is we are also not in a test environment or in a lab environment, but rather we are trying to bring that out to real life environments. And in order to kind of prepare the environment for it, there is this living lab concept, which kind of is a loosely coupled kind of broader range where these new products, new services are deployed. And the role of the user is really as a co-creator. So he's not passive. He's not kind of, we are not going after this user with, let's say, a questionnaire or something like that, but he is using this tool or the methods or the product or the services in his real environment. And the objectives are especially to address the user needs, to kind of reduce the market risks because we know what the user then would like to have, and to improve also the time to market, because there's always, I mean, we can see this always still in current products. There is a focus on functionalities that are not required by the users, let's say, as a first of the priorities. So we need to understand further with which functionalities we can address the relevant user needs, and from that, if we know these and these are the relevant ones, we can forget about the others and we can get faster to the market out of that. So this means that we do this customer co-developments, and at the same time the company learn more about the customer and they can easier adapt also, let's say, other products that they are developing in parallel. So in principle, we are going back from this, let's say, project management towards a more collaborative, facilitative method, which is at least not so strongly top-down oriented, but it's more like, yeah, it's more like a peer-to-peer, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's not a top-down approach, but it's a peer-to-peer approach with the user. And so we do this in the real life testing, and this living labs act as a catalyst for sustainable, responsible, and socially relevant innovation, because that is also something that you will get back from the user. So the user will say, yeah, but if I don't use this tool anymore, how can this be dismantled? Where can I dispose it? And so on and so forth. So especially if we are looking into this reverse logistics thing, if we are talking about circular economies, these things get more and more important. And so the innovation is not only, let's say, in the product development stage, but it's also going over the usage phase until the dismantling phase. And the user is really there seen as the co-creator who has this idea of this life cycle already baked into the ideas that they are doing in this living lab. So it's also this kind of responsible innovation in that direction. So what are the basic principle is active user involvement. Talked a lot about that, but it's also multi-stakeholder participation. That means that a lot of these living labs are not there are kind of regional endeavors, meaning that, let's say, a certain region says, yeah, we are the living lab region for this and this, or we are the living lab country or something like that, yeah, because the baseline for all this stuff is this so-called quadruple helix, which consists out of business, which is obviously developing and deploying the service or the product at the end. We have the society, which is kind of the guys who will buy the service. And then usually this is also facilitated, or sometimes this is facilitated by academia, so by us. And then there's obviously the government issue. So some services will have impact on government, some will not have impact on government, but it's always good to have the government on board just to kind of see what is the holistic picture for this service or for this product. This all needs to be orchestrated and moderated, and so this is one of the big challenges, to kind of bring all these stakeholders together and also to kind of translate the message, let's say for business, translate the message for business, for government, and kind of translate the message for a service or whatever also for the government. So and the whole thing is, as already kind of laid out, co-created. I have put the emphasis on so far on the end user, but it's clear that the business is also involved, sometimes academia involved, but sometimes it's also the government who is involved, to kind of set some maybe some regulatory framework, and this requires then that an innovation takes place. The whole thing is always done in the real life setting, which means that we are not doing this. I'm kind of repeating myself, but anyway, you are not doing this in a, let's say, artificial area. So the idea is to really put it into the real life setting, and therefore make sure that, let's say, real life problems also occur, right? For example, you are kind of deploying a service where you have some multimedia content involved in it, and then you learn, yeah, you are deploying this service where you have only GPS coverage or something like that with your mobile phone. So it won't work, right? And these kind of things, they can be actually very easily identified in this real life setting, and kind of prevent the companies to deploy products that are just not suited for the market, right? And it's actually the same like with this Quran and the Bible. In principle, it's the question on what is the cultural background of the people. Why is this successful or not successful, right? And on the other hand, what is also important is sometimes people are kind of let's say um, they are not so happy because they look over the living labs and they are looking for a method that you can roll out and then and then the thing is done. Yeah. And the problem is that not every method is kind of suited for every living lab. So what you need to do is you need to kind of customize the methods that you are using based on your particular setting. And the Living Lab network, from my point of view, has the big advantage that you can look for a networking partner who has the same setting that you have, and then you can see what works for him, and you can extrapolate what will most probably work for you. Yeah. And so we have also a governance model, and the main challenges that we have identified there is, let's say, the goals need to be aligned between the different stakeholders. This is the interesting thing, because obviously the government goals are not easily alignable with the goals of of a company that is working in a specific region. So there is sometimes a mismatch. You need to find the funding, obviously. I mean, the integration of the end user and of government and multi-stakeholder approach as such will obviously cost more money because it is not so streamlined than the normal process. On the other hand, you will save because you won't have so much failures at the end, right? Data sharing, privacy, also stakeholder engagement and sustainability are, let's say, things that are important and that have maybe and is particular interesting to see how different companies tackle these problems and what the expectations of the end users are somehow. Yeah, and it's not always clear whether they are really aligned, and it's kind of also sometimes it's also difficult to communicate these goals that are coming from specific stakeholder roles, like for example government roles. So in principle, if you are running a living lab and you have government influence in it, and it's at least we have seen several times where we've seen that there has been, let's say, problems to communicate the government goals and the government ideas to, let's say, the business, for example. And so in principle, when we are looking into these, so they are living, so especially for this grand societal changes, the government obviously plays a major role in that. Also, the user plays a major role, and let's say, depending on what kind of living labs you are looking in, you will have, let's say, different emphasis on certain roles or on certain stakeholders in these living labs. Yeah. So whether they are inclusive society engagement, I mean, if you look through the European network of living labs, you will see a whole plethora of living labs for different possibilities. And when we started, we were only talking about, let's say, products and services that were for particular companies. And at that time, Nokia wanted to further understand what can we do with our users, how can we integrate them into an innovation process. And this has been now broadened and made bigger. And now we have suddenly whole cities that say, yeah, we are the living lab of Turku, whatever. Yeah. So this has been the concept as such has been broadened a lot, and then some new methods has been also developed in order to address this problem. The success factors and challenges. So I think what is important is that, let's say, everybody has a shared vision of what the service, what the product will look like. The interaction needs to be on eye level, so it's not that there is any hierarchy in that. The actors and resources and activity need to be present. So if you are only available, let's say, every second of the meeting, if you have these bigger living lab meetings, then this will not work. The operational model and supporting structures are important, also where to meet and so on and so forth, what kind of methods to use. Sometimes these in print, or let's say in general, you are using the living lab to kind of test a certain product or develop a certain product, and then afterwards it's kind of over to some extent, and then there is a new product coming, so it requires the user to kind of switch to new contexts, or to new context, which is sometimes difficulty, how to governance the whole process. Sometimes you get unforeseen outcome, like for example with this Bible on the phone. So nobody expected that suddenly this Quran is such a success on this machine. The efficiency is usually, as I told you, I mean, every time you involve more and more users, the thing gets more and more complex and will take more and more time. So you have to have a commitment to this holistic view onto the problem, right? So if you don't have this holistic view and you would like to go the fastest way from a prototype to the market, it's not the right method. It's the right message for being successful in the market at the end. So a product you can get much more efficiency from an idea to a product if you do it by your own. Whether this is successful or not is at least not so sure, like if you use this living lab method. And the recruitment of user groups is sometimes difficulty, and the scalability and sustainability of these innovation activities is also sometimes not so easy, because you are usually always triggered with different services, different products, and so you never know how this will at the end work out. But at the end, what we see is, I mean, if we do the traditional approach, and we were trying to kind of assess what is the impact of this? Yeah, you can obviously define KPIs beforehand, and you have comparable structures, or you can go this bottom up, right, where you go from input, activity, output, outcomes, impact. So really trying to understand, so how is this really, let's say, this change, how will this have an impact onto the broader scale of things? We have used both. In principle, our idea is, we feel that the bottom-up approach is the better approach, because you don't have to think from the beginning about these KPIs, which kind of, in some cases, can limit you and can kind of confine you in certain ways. And so from our point of view, it makes more sense to go bottom-up rather than top-down. And so development and methods is Martin, I suspect.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, thank you very much, Jens. So Jens and Sylvia, I've now been talking for almost an hour. Let's say it's over 4 to 2. So I will be talking for another hour. No, of course not. I'm just kidding. I think we are running a bit late. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sylvia. I will keep it as short and precise.
Yes,
And possible to give also the other speakers today sometimes here. But we thought, just to round this off a bit, it would be nice to give you an example how you could establish a living lab. And we took this from ENOL, so you see the reference down there, European Network of Living Labs there. There are a number of phases there. You go from exploration, co-creation, co-design, experimentation, and then you evaluate the result. And ideally, I would say this is a do, plan, check, act, repeat cycle, like you find so often in economics. You go then back to the start again and refine maybe the solutions there. You see the goals there, but also the methods there, and we will just be presenting a few of the methods which could be used for those for the innovation cycle there. Being very well aware, that there's many more methods there, and also this list here, there is not exhaustive. Please feel free to go online, see in all the literature there, because I think there's some great methods out there. And the key challenge, at least in my opinion, is knowing the methods and being able to select the right method for the right task, for your target group, for all the challenges, the KPI measurements, as we saw in the last slide, for example, there for instance. I think that's the key challenge behind it. So this is just an example, a simplistic one, but I think still a valid approach that we could give there. Starting there by the exploration phase, I think we can use the SWOT analysis there, SWOT analysis there. I think most of you already know the method there itself, I think, and if you don't, I'll show it on the next slide. But there again, on this slide, what should be visible there is, knowing, what are the benefits of the method, what are the limitations or the disadvantages, let's say. And I think especially in this SWOT analysis, they are sometimes really beneficial to get the common talking ground, talk to stakeholders there, find out what you want to do. But at the end of the day, the SWOT analysis, as we can see here as well, is rather limited there. You just have these 4 sectors there. You put there your strengths, the weaknesses, the threats, and the all opportunities there. Find them out in a kind of a workshop setting, at least that's the way how we are doing it, then list them, then document them, and you have a nice SWOT analysis done there. Maybe you refine it in second workshop. But at the end of the day, the strength of this method there is really, that everyone feels at home. It's easy, and everyone at least has an opinion and can contribute something there. So this could be an option there. And I think that the disadvantage maybe, you normally do this in workshop settings, so people are talking to each other. This is great, people talking to each other, but at the end of the day, could also be limitations, because it hinders people who are not less, less talkative, let's say, or do not feel at home talking, they could then hold back on their opinions, their thoughts, and their inputs there. And there I will show at the end an alternative to the whole thing there. That was the first phase. Next phase could be co-creation phase. We normally, or just recommend for your small to medium Living Lab design thinking approach. I think also many of you are familiar with the approach there, but I think it's important to see how we're changing now from explorative view to a designing view there. We're trying to then design something together, co-create something in cooperation with your stakeholders there. This is the standard image you always get, when you're talking about design thinking. That's by Damien Newman there. It's supposed to be showing, the process, how to reach your goal there. So it's a cumbersome process. You need to take many paths until you reach your final destination, which will then continuously evolve there. So the path is the goal, let's say. So it's a more intensive, let's say, journey to the goal. This is another way of looking at it, and I think that's also important for you when you're talking about a Living Lab development there. We're talking about these 3 dimensions there: desirability, feasibility, viability. In a nutshell, we're talking about desirability. Do the people want it? For usability, is it adequate for the business there? Feasibility, do we have the technologies to implement the whole thing? And in this model, if you get all those 3 things, not just, the in intersection of 2 of these circles, where you get other things like functional innovation, process innovation, or emotional innovation. In the middle, that's, the golden standard. That's what you really want. Basically, yay, we are in the middle here. That's let's say, what you all want, but it's a hard journey there. And I think that's the goal to keep in mind always, maybe keeping in mind that the journey there can be cumbersome and time intensive there. Then maybe just briefly, maybe the process in design thinking there. We would say we have these normal phases there. There's the phases there about empathize, define, idea, prototype, and test. Also, then normally stylized in this double diamond approach here in design thinking then. So I'm running out of time, but I think that's a nice way to look at it, and could also give you then an opportunity to implement this within your Living Lab setting. Phase 3, next phase, they're just shorting. Jens has also been talking about minimum viable products there. I just showed you the brief idea there. So the original analogy there was this donut. And the idea there is to have a prototype development. And you start out, let's say I want to open a donut stand here in Dornbirn City at the market square. Start out with the donut there. This could be my prototype there. Simple donut with sugar. Then my minimum viable product there. This could be the first product that I bring to the market, which is already giving a benefit to the user. Then a donut with glaze and sprinkles. And then after an iteration after the prototyping, I have the finalized product, a donut with glaze, 2 kinds of sprinklet, and maybe, which has here a chocolate dip there as well there. The important thing there is to keep in mind that it makes no sense to just to have a minimum product, because there you have no added value for the user. Makes no sense to have just a viable product itself, because they will get too expensive. Where you want to be again, if you have this Venn diagram here again, you want to be in the middle of these 2 circles here. And also, we'll just show you briefly, if you have already familiar with the MVP methodology, there are also, in the meantime, there have been developments towards other minimum viable methods, let's say, starting really from the product, the service development there, minimal viable organization, which is also really interesting topic. And then last but not least, the minimal viable ecosystem. And that I think, especially when we're talking about government, like Jens has been talking before, then it can be important to actually also look at these ecosystems, since they are actually also challenging to foster and integrate. And I think a lot of our partners today are also from the public sector there. All again looking for the center stage there. You're looking for in the Venn diagram to get the middle there. And last but not least, maybe just to give you an idea, the design thinking playbook for this minimal viable ecosystem development has some nice templates there. This is built on the business model canvas, which you're all familiar with, I guess. And this is really an excellent way how to do this within a group, within a stakeholder set. And finally, to conclude my examples there, the evaluation phase, and there normally what we would recommend, that's the Delphi method there, which you can also see on the right there. The Delphi method is basically there to find the consensus between a multitude of stakeholders and actors. And the nice thing about the Delphi method, this is dissimilar or different from the SWOT analysis, is that there you are not actually making workshops. You are creating questions, and you're creating a catalog of these questions there, and then use the catalog to be distributed to experts there, and they have to give you a written feedback. This can really be beneficial to especially talk to people who are not really in the mood of talking, who don't like to share their ideas, who are not that outspoken or flamboyant, let's say, in these workshop settings. This can really be a beneficial setting there. And just finally, maybe the Delphi method, those of you who are in engineering, they know the method as it is used for requirements and engineering. So it's usually used at the start. But originally, the Delphi method was developed to find, let's say, consensus on a forecast, on forecasting the impact of a solution. So this can be one of those methods which is feasible for these Living Lab evaluation phases as well. So this was my last slide. I know I was a bit fast, through the slides there, but I think you got some overview there. And of course, if you should have any question, you can always contact us. And I'd like to thank you for your attention. On my behalf, Jens's and Silvia's there. Then we'll hand over back to Goran to introduce the next speaker. Or I think first you have some questions, I think. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, partners from Vorarlberg University, for a very nice introductory presentation. And you are right. The idea is to have a question and answer session, short, after each presentation. Of course, if if there are no questions, there is an option also for you to raise a question in the latter stage of this session. But let's say for now, if there are any questions now, it's a very good time to ask and to raise it. Okay, there
Hi,
is
Marek
our
Marek Buresh
partner
here.
Marek.
So I have a just short, simple question. I would like to ask is if the University of Vorarlberg is part of some living club, and if so, what are those living clubs, or if it's one or more, what are they focused on? In which fields they operate?
Yeah, so we are currently part of 3 innovation laboratories, let's say, and they're all based on living labs. We have one lab focused on mobility, one on circular economy, then we also have one on sustainability of IoT devices. These are the kind of living labs that we are currently in. But of course, we are not a huge university, but we have around, 1,500 students or so. I'm sure there are more, but these are at least the 3 most important ones at our research center. And I think Silvia will also be establishing one for innovation management with Vorarlberg companies as well as part of the IaaS4DR pilot there.
And I bet, as you also mentioned, that the operation of living clubs really matters on the attitude of the partners and so on. I bet that not all of those 3 are working in the same manner. So if you could say from your point of view, which of those 3 living clubs is the best, where the partners are the most active, or that you see the biggest contribution?
Okay, for me that's very simple. The mobility lab is the best. That's the reason that is that because I'm the head of it. No, I'm just joking. I think they're all different, and really depends on the partner and stakeholder structure. I think the biggest challenge is sometimes not really the method, as I tried before, is actually to engaging the stakeholders, finding the stakeholders, and then also being able to present them, look, if you are participating in our living lab, these are the impacts that you might achieve. And also sometimes in the past, they maybe had some bad experiences in the past, and then they are very, cautious joining these academic consortia and engaging with them because they think that we will be doing fundamental research, we just be writing papers. But what we really want to do is we want to have this bottom-up innovation approach, delivering results for the companies, for the stakeholders. And that's sometimes the challenge, really being able to show this, present this. That's, I think, the biggest challenge there. Or did I say anything wrong? Or how do you see it, Jens? Or Silvia?
Well, I see it the same way. I mean, it's obviously, I mean, there is these 3 labs that were mentioned. They have different thematic orientations, and that means that you will have different settings, right? If you have something that is dealing with the deployment of IoT systems for recyclability or something like that, it will be different than when you do something for mobility. So mobility always also means you will have more government involvement and so on and so forth. So it really boils down to which extent which are the focal partners there, right? And for mobility, obviously, you have a lot of government involved. For IoT devices, is not so important, right?
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for the questions. Oh, answers, sorry.
Hey, Francesco. Long time no see.
How are you, my friend?
Fine, thanks.
I think this is a very good introduction into,
Yeah.
into the following presentation of Mr. Francesco Molinari. Once again, thanks to partners from Vorarlberg on this theoretical framework regarding the living labs. We know, the boundaries now of the topic, and we asked our colleague Francesco Molinari to support this training session with his presentation, which will be like a it will be like a more let's say practical theory, let's say like that. It will like more practical issues, which will maybe even bring this subject of living lab closer to the stakeholders and closer to our participants today, and then also participants who will be watching this in a video. Francesco, so can you share your screen and start presentation?
Sure. I just wanted to raise the issue of breaking up for 5 minutes at my own cost, so I will be ready to speak for 5 minutes less, just to give the possibility to everyone to have a break before this other presentation. So, what do you think, Goran?
If you suggest, I mean, we are already here for 1 hour and 15 minutes. I think it's a good time for a 5 minute break. So at 2:20 we can proceed. Is it okay? 5 minutes?
Okay.
Okay, in 5 minutes we'll see each other again. Okay, I think that more or less 1 minute break is behind us, and that we can continue with the presentation of Mr. Francesco Molinari on the subject of sustainable living labbing. So I think that we are all here. Francesco, you can proceed with the presentation.
Thank you, Goran. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm always happy to talk about living labs. As Professor Schumacher mentioned in his introduction, we have been sharing for about 20 years the experience of being involved in the European movement of living labs. Actually, with my small consultancy company, I've been a member of the European Network of Living Labs since the year 2008, which is starting to be something. And so I'm happy to explore the issue of sustainability, meaning in this case, economic and financial viability of the living lab as a methodology, as an approach, and also in many cases as an organization doing activities which, as I will try to explain, require a good and constant inflow of finance to be successful to achieve their goals. Practically speaking, in one slide, this is what my presentation is about. I will explore practical strategies and innovative business models that pretend to ensure the long-term viability of living labs, especially the transition of living labs into self-sustaining ecosystems. As my friend Martin mentioned when speaking of the minimum viable approach, envisioning, which also includes ecosystems, drawing on real-world examples and lessons learned, and linking up, this is very interesting, with the presentation from another Francesco Filippi from Musol, who is involved in a very interesting project exploring how to get the maximum benefit from user engagement and people's participation in activities of many kinds, including living lab activities. The structure of this presentation is the following. I will liaise with the contents of the excellent illustration of the living lab approach done by the team of the University of Vorarlberg to focus and narrow the focus on the challenge that a living lab has when public funding is over. I say public funding, although there are indeed examples, and I will also mention them, of living labs funded by private finance. Indeed, the main message of the first presentation of today is that it is in the interest of private enterprises to move away from the closed innovation model and towards the open innovation model. So we can assume, and we must assume, that a lot of activism in the living lab domain comes from the initiative of private sector enterprises. Still, some or most of these activities hardly come to the forefront. So when we speak of living labs, if we look for examples, it is far more likely that the examples we find around are initiatives supported by public funding. So the big question is, how can we ensure that in the case this public finance falls short or disappears, the activities of Living Labs continue across time? Of course, there are many ways of approaching the issue. I don't want to keep you involved in a structured research endeavor, which would require, for example, surveying, an activity of surveying Living Labs, those Living Labs that have shown the longest track record in terms of time. I will just mention a few examples, trying to get hints from those examples of not only the pillars of sustainability, but also the common pitfalls, the most common pitfalls that should be avoided. And then, like I promised, I will liaise with the presentation from Francesco Filippi on the role and contribution of public participation for, I'm using a different term that is now becoming popular, knowledge valorization, meaning the transformation of knowledge assets wherever they reside, including in a company, including in the customer base of that company, transformation of that knowledge into exploitable assets for the enterprise, for society as a whole, depending on the needs and the points of view. So this is the global agenda for my presentation. Like I said, I will start or restart from the definition that particularly my friend Jens Schumacher commented already in depth, which is the official, so to speak, definition of what a living lab is about. Open innovation ecosystems in real life environments. It should have been, I have an earlier definition in mind, real life settings based on a systematic user co-creation approach that integrates research and innovation in multi-stakeholder environments, placing end users at the center of the innovation process. So we are anyway speaking about innovation ecosystems. It's the most frequent term, built around the end users, taking another old-fashioned expression which used to be there in the past, taking the driving wheel of innovation. So compared with the closed innovation approach and also the laboratory research approach, where users are just invited for a very short time and for a very limited in scope experimentation round, nominally at least, the living labs are far broader, far more extensive and encompassing in the breadth of their activities. This is certainly what the living labs are about if we want to preserve the integrity of the context of the concept and also the originality of it, which has been the source of a long-lasting success. Still, what I should also mention is that in many cases, and despite the existence of public funding, what we see around us are limited or partial implementations of these principles for many reasons, including lack of capacity, including lack of time, including lack of resources. What we see in front of us are just proxies and partial implementations of these big definition. So one of the warnings I would like to launch for today and for the future is that we should be very careful and analyze in depth what we have in front of us to check whether they really conform to the definition provided by the European Network of Living Labs. In fact, what happens is something similar to the old story coming from an Indian parable of 6 blind men from Hindustan who one day decided to go and try to find an elephant because they had never seen an elephant in their lives. And of course, being blind, the poor guys could only base their assessment on touching parts of this very big animal. And depending on the parts that they were touching, their interpretation of what an elephant is about or what a living lab is about was very partial. Some of them were comparing to a wall, to a tree, to a snake. And the same goes in many cases for these partial or limited interpretations of the living labs concept. In practice, and I'm taking this picture from literature, in the bottom left part of the slide, you see the source. 4 elements are core and should always be identified in a living lab situation. The multi-stakeholder involvement, reference goes to the so-called quadruple helix, which was also mentioned in the previous presentation: academia, public sector, private sector, civil society. Should any of these be missing, we should start already questioning if we have a real living lab in front of us. User centricity is another element. I prefer the old definition of user-driven rather than user-centric innovation, with users taking the initiative or at least staying at the same level as researchers in the professional meaning of the term. Of course, the orientation to innovation, but also to learning. This is an interesting add-on to the concept. Wherever and whenever people co-innovate, they also bring home the experience of co-innovating as a learning experience. This is a very important element which I will take up again towards the end of my presentation. And finally, and very importantly, the real life setting. This is not an optional element. I dare say that the most characterizing aspect of the living lab approach is exactly the real life setting. What does it mean exactly? It means that contrary to what happened before the introduction of this new approach, again, my friend Jens mentioned several times the experience of Nokia, the company that now I think still exists, but used to be 20 years ago the global leader in the manufacturing of mobile phones before they became smartphones. We can say did not survive to the transition from mobile to smartphone. At that time, companies like Nokia were innovating and therefore adopting the living lab approach, because instead of calling for some hours to their laboratories a limited number of volunteers being given the opportunity of playing with the new version of the mobile device for some minutes or hours, contrary to this approach, which is the old-fashioned approach, they were given the possibility of using the prototypes for a long time, for days and weeks, during their ordinary lives, to take note of any issue or, on the other side, to validate the innovativeness and the usefulness of any new feature tested against the daily experience of usage, which is the closest possible experience to the one of a customer who spent some money to pay for that new device once it has become a product available on the market. Just as an anecdote, it is said that one of the very reasons for the huge international success, especially of Nokia, of the company Nokia, especially in countries like India, Pakistan, and so on, was not that much related to the features of the devices they were manufacturing and selling in terms of, I don't know, power, battery, duration of the battery, or number of items that could be stored in the diary. It was related to the optional feature of mobile phones being used as a torch in all the situations where the energy, the power was not available on the grid or was not available at all because of the location of the users at that time. This is what real-life usage means. Only through testing their devices in those countries in realistic or real-life conditions could Nokia, the Nokia team, the Nokia development team come to realize the importance of this user interaction. Let's now make one step forward. I don't know who of you are familiar with the ancient Roman myth of Janus. Janus was a god with two faces. We can use this analogy with Janus to highlight the fact that every living lab actually has two faces. One face, and that was very well described in the previous presentation, so that I don't have the need to repeat what was so nicely said by my predecessors in this presentation. One face, one set of features can be retrieved on the methodological side. A collection of instruments to do the exploration, the collaboration, and so on, the experimentation, and so on, so that we can say, okay, a living lab is all these that is tested in repeated trials and has been demonstrated on repeated occasions as capable of ensuring the added value of the research and innovation practice carried forward in this way. But it also has, as I wrote, an ontological side, like the profile of an entity, which in some cases also materialized as a concrete new entity created, for example, by means of a memorandum of understanding with the involvement of quadruple helix stakeholders. Another term frequently used to name that entity is the quadruple P, a public-private people partnership, again, to stress the fact that users occupy the driving seat of innovations. They are at the same level as the other stakeholders in this research and innovation system. These pictures are simply illustrative of the methods on the left-hand side and the quadruple helix entities on the right-hand side. I don't need to spend time on that. What is more interesting, and you see the source of this picture in the bottom of the slide, is that practically speaking, we should imagine a living lab as the combination of these two elements, the two faces of the God genus, built on a collection or a portfolio of projects. This is very important to stress because another weak point of the current loose approach to living labbing is to name living lab what actually is one single project. Even in the case that this project has duly and completely fulfilled all the requirements, including from the top, you see the macro requirement, engaging the quadruple helix stakeholders in a context-based fashion, in real or realistic settings, and also see the bottom, adopting all the nice tools and methods that were particularly described in the previous presentation. Even in that case, if what we are talking about is one single project, this is not to be considered, it cannot be considered or named a living lab. Just the first step towards the creation of an entity, even a virtual entity, built on repeated applications of the living lab approach in a portfolio of projects. So when we speak of the sustainability of living labs, we have to keep in mind this concept of repeated adoption of all the elements described before, which, practically speaking, entails higher costs compared to conventional lab-based research and innovation approaches. Here I have prepared a non-exhaustive list of reasons why the costs of living labbing are normally higher than the costs of corresponding activities carried out in the old way, in the old good way or old bad way by the research and innovation teams wherever located in public or private context. I will not go into the details, but you can see the breadth of these areas of activity where a supplement of efforts is required. This is another way of showing the same concept, the differential costs between the conventional and the living lab approach. And again, it is something I will not comment in detail, but it shows very clearly that for each aspect of an ideal type of research and development in innovation approach, there can be two distinct ways, the conventional one and the living lab-based way to carry these activities forward, leading to quite likely extra costs, which will have to be faced in one way or another and are usually faced by a supplement of public money. another way, yet another way of looking at the same thing. This is very idealistic. Don't take the diagram at face value, because it should have been far more complex than this one. But if we plot against time the costs of running repeated projects using the Living Labs approach and compare with the costs of doing similar or the same activities in the old-fashioned way, we can predict that the red line permanently stays above the yellow line due to this differential in the costs of delivering innovation. On the other hand, it is quite likely that especially public funding may be decreasing across time. This may not be the case when private funding is involved. Think of the presentation before me. If we have private enterprises, and I will show you examples that are truly committed, it can also be speculated that their funding to Living Lab activities will never cease. Still, this scenario is something that, again, in a very rough way, we can visualize as being the frequent scenario for most organizations that have been involved across these more or less 20 years in Living Lab activities. The public funding goes below the line, below the red line, before then below the yellow line, and the consequence is that the organization wanting to survive this situation is led to do additional compromise in the fulfillment of all the strict requirements of the definition of a living lab. So when public funding or public grant is exhausted, the issue is how to face the challenge of avoiding the stagnation or the closure of what used to be named a living lab. So there is need to design and implement sustainable models that preserve the mission and impact of the living lab, where sustainability is defined, forget about environment and climate for an instant, as connected with financial self-sufficiency, which normally is associated with a diversification of revenue streams above and beyond the public grant, operational continuity, which may be achieved through creating a very streamlined structure for the execution of all the activities connected with especially the methodological phase of a living lab, but also with continuous stakeholder engagement and value creation. Again, my predecessors here have highlighted the importance of keeping a mission or a vision or simply a good level of achievement for the Living Lab activities that goes in line with the interests of at least the most relevant stakeholders to bear in mind when trying to give continuity to Living Lab effort. And finally, we should never forget that according to a broad vision, it's not only the business community, but more generally society that Living Lab is supposed to serve, which poses the issue of giving relevance and usefulness to the Living Lab activities across time. So what are the pillars we can think of using and build our activity on to create conditions for sustainability? The first pillar is the diversification of revenue streams. This can be achieved in several ways. which are described here. I will not read the slide to simplify and save time. But there is not only that, there is also the orientation of giving a very agile and cost-effective structure to all activities, basing them of very limited investments in infrastructure, a lean governance and management body or bodies, and a core group of permanent staff supplemented by project-based and time-limited hirings. What I can anticipate already is that the success stories I know about typically create living labs as functional units of larger organizations. So if you are yourselves thinking of creating a living lab above and beyond the condition of the portfolio projects I was mentioning earlier, you should anyway work in this direction, which seems to be one of the most widely practiced to give continuity across time to the living lab experience. A third pillar is, of course, business model innovation, which is tightly linked with the diversification of revenue streams. And again, I will not read, although there are here examples of several possible approaches which can also be concurrent to one another. And finally, the relevance and usefulness across time. I used this graph, this diagram, which ideally reconnects with a previous image that Jens Schumacher presented before. After a first phase, starting in 2006, the birth year of the European Network of Living Labs, in this first phase, Living Labs were focusing on ICT innovation in most of the cases. What we have seen is a huge diversification in terms of topics, as also reflected by the three distinct living labs or innovation labs mentioned before by my friend Martin as activities where Vorarlberg University is engaged. Different thematic living labs has been the prevalent way of creating and making sustainable a living lab for about 15 years. More recently, what we have seen is a specialization of living labs in two main directions, one related with the city, so smart city related, broad policy tools or instruments to accelerate the transformation of a city, and also connection with nature, climate, environment, soil, other aspects of the ecological transition of our societies. Let's now go to the success stories. I have prepared a few of them. I will try again to rush because I'm now coming to the end of my allocated time, and also because you can retrieve the contents of this slide at any time after this presentation. The first case is Enol itself. Enol itself, among other things, many merits, including the diffusion of the living lab concept across Europe. They have created a labeling and certification process which awards a quality seal to the living labs that can document a full application of the living lab approach. There is a process which is always open. You can apply by simply going on the Enol website, presenting yourselves in the best possible way as a living lab and asking to be evaluated by Enol appointed assessors. If everything goes well, you can get a label from Enol as an adherent member. These are the core assessment criteria, which mirror the discussion that you have been hearing from the two presentations of this afternoon. But more than that, the stress is on the distinction between single projects and collections, portfolios of projects that can document capacity to adopt the methodologies in a rigorous fashion. The new members become, of course, the awarded Living Labs become members of the Enol ecosystem, and with the membership fees, they contribute to the long-term survival of Enol as a sort of trade union or association representing the Living Labs, the best cases across Europe. A second example is a very old example in terms of age and therefore maturity. One of the founding members of the European Network of Living Labs in 2006. It is, practically speaking, a branch or an institute of the Luleå University of Technology in Sweden, named Botnia Living Lab. And the reason why I like mentioning this example is because it is among the few that tried concretely to build bridges with the financing system, the banking system and the financing system for innovation, through strategic alliances with venture capitalists and the inclusion of criteria evaluating the degree of openness of innovation, the degree of realism of innovation in the normal application processes of startups and other enterprises asking for private finance to pursue their innovation goals. Another success story comes from the city of Barcelona, and it is an example of the transition that I was mentioning before towards living labs that are no longer connected with a single issue, a single team, but more broadly aimed at the transformation of an entire city. The city in question is Barcelona, but the area of operation of the Barcelona Urban Lab is a district of the city, formerly an industrial district with several factories and plants, where the city of Barcelona has launched through a tender or a call for proposal mechanism several small-sized projects for the revitalization of the abandoned spaces of the city through the creation of new and innovative activities. The funding model, despite its reliance on external sources, is supported in a stable fashion by the city of Barcelona public budget, although it is fair to admit that this only gives a minimum level of resources. The others are attracted by the initiative of those who work in this living lab. Another success story comes from the city of Thessaloniki. And again, we are speaking of a unit in a broader organization or institution, in this case, the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and especially its School of Medicine located in the hospital of the city. Here, the activities are thematically driven, and in fact, it is a living lab which was established quite a long time ago, and they are really implementing the Living Lab approach in the component of real-life experimentation, having created the owners of this Living Lab dedicated rooms in the hospital spaces where patients, of course, volunteers, can be exposed to new technological solutions to tackle specific healthcare issues, which are still the solutions in the prototype form, and they need this kind of real or realistic experimentation to accelerate and make more secure the pathway towards transformation into real products or therapies in this case. The last example nicely brings us back to the beginning, and the beginning is the presentation done by my colleagues of Vorarlberg University, making reference to the initiative of innovation-prone enterprises like, for example, Bosch in this case, which are keen on running at their premises Living Lab-like experiments, with the only issue, which is not trivial, that in many cases access to the results is limited for obvious reasons of business confidentiality. There is one more, which is Living Lab Plus, coming from outside Europe, especially from Taiwan. This is a nice example that we can compare a bit to the Barcelona case. In this case, the Taiwan Living Lab has a component which looks like the Barcelona case, but also a component which is similar to the Bosch Living Lab in the sense that it is industry-oriented and so builds on the involvement of several industrial partners in the implementation of projects aimed at the release of innovations, for example, in the domains of AI, virtual worlds, Internet of Things, and so on. So to summarize, we have several profiles, and I'm happy to note that almost 20 years later, the provisions of a study that Professor Schumacher and myself did for the European Commission are still there and confirmed by evidence. We have, among the sustainable living labs, those who have survived across time in the best way, profiles of policy-driven government initiatives, local like in Barcelona, national like in Taiwan, but also regional and European, of course. We have examples of university spin-offs or R&D laboratories. We have examples of open innovation-prone enterprises. We have examples of business associations nowadays in the past there used to be others. And globally, all of the above are also trying to diversify their profiles by offering services to third parties, which third parties can perceive the value of and therefore be ready to pay for. On the other hand, many living labs which are no longer with us today, which are wrongly considered to be living labs, are basically one-off experiments, or anyway experiments that are finalized for the limited time during which public finance is available to support their activities. Globally, what seems to work in the long term is the presence of a private or public stakeholders providing a continuous inflow of financial resources to cover the costs of this activity. to mention the pitfalls, wanting to give continuity to a living lab that is still in its initial phase, we should therefore, based on this overview of the experiences that exist, avoid over-relying on a single revenue source, typically public money, starting to think out otherwise already from day one. We should always bear in mind that if we lost the connection with our stakeholders, that would be the death sentence, even for an affluent organization being able to sustain the presence of a living lab at its premises. We should consider the importance of lean governance and management structures, and also the importance of communicating very well the results and impacts both internally and outside. And in the discussion, I would be happy to hear from you if you have other ideas or proposals in mind for common pitfalls to avoid. So concluding, there is one unexplored or little explored aspect which will be presented in more detail by my colleague Francesco Filippi after me, which is the role of public participation, and especially how this may magnify the contribution of engaged users in the co-creation and validation and experimentation activities of a living lab. We can speculate that not only knowledge valorization in the sense of producing useful knowledge which can have a market value, a societal value, a policy value, but more broadly, a strong contribution to living lab sustainability can come from methods and tools which are only partly known and practiced at the moment, aimed at magnifying, at strengthening the contribution of user co-creation to the living lab activities. This is something that is work in progress, and on that you will hear more in the following presentation. Practically speaking, this points at specific design features for your living lab, which can be, to some extent, the derivative, the consequence of making knowledge valorization and public participation for knowledge valorization an integral part of your living lab activity. Although this, it should be remembered, it's only a necessary, not a sufficient condition for sustainability. And with that, I am done, and I apologize if I talked too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco. You were in the time frame as we planned for this today's session. Um, Interesting presentations. Any questions from the participants? Things are clear or not so clear about the living labs, especially for the folks in PBN and Carlo Vivari, as they are having a pilot activity, whether actually with the adoption of the living lab, but they're still calculating if they're going to be go in the direction of the certification or go in the direction of the adaptation of the methodology.
Thank you. Just a comment and an appreciation. We do not have a question at this moment, but thank you very much for the comprehensive slides and the clarification explanation. We will check your slides afterwards, and in case some questions might arise, we will let you know. But thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Martin, and apologies, sincere apologies, because I haven't mentioned your presentation in today's session. As the participants will see, your very interesting activities that you're working with the elderly people, and which, according to my humble opinion, I'm not an expert, but here are the experts on the living labs. For sure, they are something which is in the spirit of the living lab, if it's not already a living lab itself. So, but we will have that opportunity to see your presentations your presentation in the following minutes. I don't know if you remember the presentation from Priedor. I think Stefan was there. If you remember the presentation of our colleague working on AgriTech Hub, it's it's a very let's say I mean, it's a typical example of the living lab lookalike activity, and in which you can see that actually for the success, for actually to gain the success in a living lab, you need right leadership, as was the man which was presenting that day. He was presenting his activities in the AgriTech hub. Okay, so. Due to time constraints, the proposal now is to we should proceed with the presentation of Sasha Strauss from the Innovation Technology Cluster. He has a green point presentation on the green point or how to establish and run a successful living lab. So we are getting more closer to the really practitioners on the field, and to see how actually the living labs look like in a real life environment. After this presentation, we will have a presentation of Mr. Francesco Filippi, as announced by Mr. Molinari, and we will finalize the event with a presentation of Martin Dan from PVN. So, Sasha, are you there?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm here, and thank you for this opportunity. And I would like to present you with our Greenpoint Living Lab. Our Living Lab is 5 years old, and it's registered by ANOL for this time. And for the first time in this year, we been in Andorra on the Living Lab members event, and I really strongly support you if you are thinking about the Living Lab establishment that you join these events of and all, because you can learn really a lot. But now let me share my screen. Hopefully you are seeing it in the full presentation mode.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. And firstly, let me introduce you with our host organization. This is ITC, the Innovation Technology Cluster. It acts as a regional innovation center, connecting research, businesses, policymakers, and communities under the Digital Innovation Hub AgriFood, which is also ITC, the founder. And we've been developing digital, circular, and participatory solution for a more sustainable agri-food systems. And Living Lab became our way to truly bring this actor together in practice. And as a neutral facilitator, ITC provides both the structure and trust that allow people to collaborate, experiment, and innovate safely. And through all this approach, we follow our mission that our region, the Pomoria region, become one of the most advanced digitized rural region in Europe for food production and supply, based on the cooperation of all actors in the food system. And as you can hear, we are very modest. And the Greenpoint Living Lab is located, as I mentioned, in the Pomoria region. This is a rural area in the northeast part of Slovenia, known for its strong agricultural tradition, but also facing many challenges, as all remote agricultural regions have. This is the small-scale farms, market barriers, and also food loss and waste along the supply chain, and also inefficiency in the supply chain. And so our living labs bring together farmers, researchers, policymakers, businesses, and citizens to co-create and test sustainable food system solution, because without all actors, the solution cannot, and also the farmer's product cannot enter the market. And our mission is to build a sustainable and transparent food system in our region by fostering innovation, promoting short supply chain, and ensuring better local market access for farmers. And our vision is simple: a resilient and circular food system built on local production, collaboration, and shared responsibility. This makes Pomorje a model region for sustainable food innovation. So basically, the Living Lab vision and missions are very aligned with the vision and mission of host organization. And to make this happen, we structured the Living Lab around 4 main pillars. The first one is establishment and governance, defining how the Living Lab operates, what rules it follows, and ensuring transparency and accountability. The second is stakeholder engagement and communication, which focuses on participatory workshops, education, and keeping all partners connected. The third pillar is digital and data infrastructure, linking the Living Lab with the digital hub agri-food data space and enabling tools for decision support and sustainability monitoring. And finally, sustainability and replication, making sure not only that our Living Lab is sustainable and doesn't die off, but also that our solutions are long-lasting and transferable to other regions. And these 4 pillars together, they give structure, but more importantly, they ensure continuity and also credibility. And when we started, we didn't begin with technology, but technology was at the core of our businesses, but we began with people. We mapped the existing regional actors, cooperatives, supply chains, producers, SMEs, research institutions, and also local authorities. We then brought them together in workshops, then we established the demo farms and also the field visit. And what we learned very quickly was that trust is the most valuable resources that we had. And once trust was established, collaboration followed quite naturally. Through our path, we promote mutual benefits, and that was sharing data, knowledge, and visibility. And our approach was based on the quadruple helix model, ensuring that every voice, from farmers to policymaker, had a place at the table and it was heard. And this was especially important for farmers because usually they experience that their voice is not heard, but they are somehow used for the technology providers to test their solution only. And the Greenpoint Living Lab governance model follows the logic of ANOL, separating roles between strategic, operational, thematic, and community level. At the strategic level, we have the steering committee. This defines the long-term vision and ensures alignment with EU and national policies. For this is important that we have representations from all important groups. At the operational level, we have our Living Lab manager. This is me, basically, supported by the ITC team, which which coordinates daily activities, facilitate communication, and ensures smooth implementation. At the working level, we have thematic groups and project managers who lead specific project initiatives, for example, like digitalization or different European projects that are linked with living labs, like the legumes, rotates, food safety for Africa, and so on. Because as you already know, the living labs are currently really on the spotlight for the European funding, especially the Horizon and others. And finally, at the community level, we have citizens, NGOs, different local communities, schools, consumers, and they contribute to awareness, education, and also the citizen science project. And this layered structure keeps the living lab open, accountable, and dynamic. And co-creation is really the heart of any living lab, including ours. We organize co-creation or participatory workshop where stakeholders jointly design solution from early on. And our demo farms are very important in collaboration with farmers because they became real-world testing ground for these ideas where solution providers, the farmers, researchers work together. We also include consumers because without consumers also our value chain cannot survive. And we engage with consumers and make knowledge transfer about food literacy, about sustainable food consumption, and sustainability awareness in general in connection with the food system. And this process not only generates data, it builds ownership and enthusiasm among participants. And as we are also the Digital Innovation Hub, we know that digitalization is a key enabler of collaboration. And through the data space, we can collect and visualize data from different actors. We use, as you can see on the right side of the screen, we built different applications covering the whole value chain, from the traceability tools to ensure transparency to the food loss and waste monitoring to different tools that support farmers, like My Farm, the farm manager who deals with management of the farm, to the field book who tracks the operation of farmers on the field or in the orchard, and benchmark to different that you can see how others are doing, and then you have this push to move forward. And this data-driven approach helps partners make more informed decisions, and also it's important for policymakers that can plan more targeted intervention. And in short, digital tools give us evidence to support systemic change. But of course, building a living lab is never a smooth path. Our biggest challenge was the fragmented stakeholder landscape. People were not used to collaborate. They tend to hide data and everything from each other. But then we managed to come through this wall of not collaborating. And in the past, the funding continuity was a problem, keeping the lab alive between projects. But as I mentioned, this is not a problem anymore now that it's a lot of opportunities for the living labs. And also we face technical barriers like incompatible data formats and low digital literacy. But we address these challenges gradually through transparency, training, and incremental implementation. And we learned that the facilitator's role is crucial. Without consistent coordination, and I mean really consistent, the network quickly weakens. And what from these experiences and challenges, several lessons stand out. And first is that start small but scales and also scale smart. Because early tangible results that people see in different groups can help build trust. Second, invest in people. This was very hard to understand in our organization, I mean ITC, because we have a lot of ICT experts, and they are more focused on technology, not that much on the people. But then we all learn that relationships matter more than technology, especially in these premises of Living Lab. And third, combine qualitative insights with quantitative data. Because stories on one hand and numbers on the other hand create credibility. And very importantly for us was that Living Lab should be anchored regionally, because success depends on being relevant to local realities. You know that we all like to hear about the global stories, but we mainly focuses on what is in our village or in our city or in our region, and finally maintain transparency and continuity. Because Living Lab is not only focusing on one project, but it's a process with multiple projects together. And what after several years, now we are in the fifth years of our establishment, Greenpoint has become a recognized regional ecosystem for innovation. We established a governance framework and we connected more than 50 regional actors. Most importantly, we contributed to a more sustainable supply chain, supporting shorter routes from farm to fork, giving the tools that support sustainability and improve transparency, like our transparency tool, and reducing food waste. We've empowered farmers and SME with digital tools, with co-creation methods, and demonstrated how data and collaboration can reduce inefficiency. And the result is not just innovation, it's more connected regional food system. And if we look ahead, our focus is on consolidation and replication. We prepared a Living Lab governance framework and toolkit that can be transferred to other regions. We use this in legumes project, and also because we are mentoring new Living Labs to projects like legumes, as I already mentioned, and food safety for Africa, Wise Food, Rotates, and other. And some of the Living Labs, so to call Living Labs, are on the early stage, some are more developed, and we try to help them out through our experience and also through different tools. And we are integrating IA like any other, and building citizen engagement tools, and continuous monitoring to sustain long-term impact is really important. And in short, we're moving from one local Living Lab to a network of interconnected labs, learning and growing together, because through the mentoring process of new Living Labs also we learn a lot and we can adapt to new knowledge. And if there's one thing we've learned, as it's really about people, and technology tools and data are important, but they only work when people trust each other, share a common purpose, and collaborate openly. This is, I think, one of the most important things that I learned through managing our living lab. And so to build a successful living lab start from people, not technology. Trust, inclusiveness, and shared vision are the true enablers of innovation. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention. And if there are any questions, I will be happy to take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha, for this presentation of Greenpoint. Very interesting presentation. Seems that there is a huge, huge. There is a great potential in this agriculture, food, and information technologies. Let's say areas of cooperation of this cross-sectoral approach. And it really it's a nice example of connecting like farmers, uh, even citizens, and also companies in developing solutions. Are there any questions? I think I see Marek. There's you raised your hand.
Yes, one question pops on my mind. Firstly, thanks to Ms. Strauss also for sharing the let's say pitfalls or the obstacles that were on the road during the development of their living lab. And regarding my question, to Ms. Strauss or also to Francesco Molinari or the presenters before, what do you think? How long does the process of like establishing the living club? How long does it take? If it's like half a year, 1 year, in order to say that we have some kind of fully developed consortium and we came from the start of the idea, let's say, to the regular operation of the living club.
Yeah, it really depends on the management team, how it is skillful, how much knowledge they have. Because in our ecosystem and our team, we were just enthusiastic at the start, and we doesn't have a lot of tools and also not enough knowledge. But if you have a lot of knowledge and here and all can majorly help, then the process is easier because we learned a lot through as we go. But if you have more systemic approach and now a lot of more knowledge is also acceptable as was back then. So I think in half of year you can establish a living club and also start collaborating with any stakeholders. But to really have the meaningful collaboration and the trust, I think that at least 2 years must pass. That this connection and collaboration really became more, I would say, on the friendly basis, because then really when the farmer has some problem and he first that he remind is to contact you, then that is I think the essence of collaboration. And also then this collaboration can be really fruitful, and that's at least in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts? Okay. We can continue with the remaining two presentations. The first one, which was announced by Francesco Molinari, it's about the policy level of involvement, of potential involvement in living lab activities. With us today is Mr. Francesco Filippi from Musso Foundation. And I would kindly ask him to present, to do his presentation, and we can discuss it after you finish. Then afterwards, we will move with Martin Dan and to finish the event. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the kind introduction and also for the invitation to share our experience today. Well, what I will explain today is how intuition has been tested in the last month in a real-life environment with the involvement, multi-actor involvement, with, of course, a user-centric approach, pursuing innovation, in particular, innovation in public policies. The intuition that I'm referring to is that there are synergies between culture and art on one side, and nudges or nudging approach on the other side. We could test this intuition, and the result I will present later during my presentation. But I would like to anticipate that the great ambition of the process is to embed this cultural nudges approach in public policies. But it doesn't mean to include some specific nudging intervention in public policies. It means embedding nudges approach in public policies, at least at local level, as a way to co-design and co-implement especially environmental policies. So my presentation will be divided in approximately four main parts. The first part, we will go a bit into the details of the meaning of nudges. Then we will go through briefly through the theoretical framework that is the base of our work. Then I will present the results of this testing in a real-life environment that apply all the core features of the Living Lab approach. And finally, we will go through the nudges approach in public policies and how to make it part of the work of public authorities, especially at local level. So, what is a nudges? What are nudges? Well, nudges are small intervention in the environment that guide our decision without imposing any decision towards, let's say, what we are pursuing with these nudges. Is a subtle change in the environment that steers people toward better decision. Actually, we are surrounded every day by nudges, even if we don't notice them. And nudges can be such easy like the default option that we find when we buy something online, or when social norm or what other people do is showed us in order to modify our decisions. A couple of examples, then we will see many more of them. For instance, when we choose the better route to reach one place, normally a green leaf indicates you which is the most efficient route. It is the nudge, I mean, the green leaf show you clearly what would be the best option at environmental level. Another classical example of nudges is a default option when you buy something online and the delivery to the pickup point is recommended and pre-selected by default in order to push you to choose the more sustainable option in the delivery between the delivery options. In my presentation and in our experience, we have focused clearly on climate nudges and environmental nudges in general. It means nudges that want to modify behaviors in a more environmental or climate-friendly way. It includes a wide range of behaviors related with transportation, energy use, but also waste reduction or on the recycling. So very briefly, some say feature of the theoretical framework that we have used to design our testing process. First of all, some typologies of nudges, a classification of nudges into different typologies that has been very useful to understand and then compare which kind of nudges are more effective. We have used this kind of taxonomy, say, of classification that you can see here. And there are several typology of nudges. We will go quickly through them. But I would like to ask you to keep in mind especially two of them. The default option that I have already shown you, one example, the pickup point in delivery of online purchase, but also another kind of another typology of nudges that the nudges based on social norms. It means when the nudges show you what other people do in order to push you to do the same. There are also other typology of nudges, like for instance, framing or reframing. Let's say it means explaining information or presenting information in another way to make it more attractive. Prompt and cues or either other signals. I mean, including signals that push you to adopt a desired behavior, like the example of the green leaf in the more efficient route when you choose the route to go anywhere. Feedback or on outcomes, it means showing you briefly what is the impact of your action if you adopt some habit or some behavior. Very similar is the information on consequences, explaining also the negative effect of your behavior if you don't change it. Encouraging publishing of written commitments, pledges, let's say. Even pushing you to adopt some behavior with some, let's say, leverage based on gaining and losses, like eco discount or something like this. Or appealing to your personal values and to improve or improving your self-image to promote environmental and friendly habits. Another kind of classification that we have used in our process is based on the Mindspace framework. It has been useful because it outlines which psychological principles we are using to understand the cognitive processes that we are affecting with our nudges. Mindspace, each letter is one of the concept of this kind of classification. Messenger, for instance, advice from an expert person is more effective than a message from a non-expert or not trusted person. For instance, incentives, of course, they are quite easy to understand. Once again, norms and defaults that are two options that we have already explained. And then salience, priming, after, committing, and ego. What are the results of the research very briefly? Before I have invited you to keep in mind default and social norm. because the review of bibliography that we have carried out, especially the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, point out that default nudges are particularly effective in Northern Europe. On the other side, nudges based on social norms, I mean, comparing your behavior with the habits and behavior of other people, is more effective in Southern Europe. So what does it mean? It means that culture matters. I mean, we cannot or we should not design the same typology of nudges. We should not design and use the same cognitive processes or try to affect the cognitive processes in different contexts, in different countries, region, or context. Social norms are more useful in Southern. Environmental consciousness and default option are more used in Northern Europe. So what we need is tailoring nudges to fit the local cultural context in order to maximize their effectiveness. But what we consider very important was that culture is important. Culture matters when designing such kind of intervention. And actually, this is very linked to other research, especially done by the University Gabriele D'Annunzio of Chieti Pescara in Italy, that not only linking climate action to local culture is important, but that the use of culture and arts in this kind of intervention make them more effective. Using culture and arts in nudging approach increase the emotional engagement, and it increase the long-term impact in terms of behavior and habits of people that are exposed to the nudges. So this is the central, let's say, assumption on which we have based our process. In particular, we are implementing. We are still a couple of months of implementation. A project based on the assumption that cultural nudges, I mean nudges that include art and cultural intervention, are more effective than generic nudges. And well, here you have some details about the project that we are implementing with the partners and the countries that are involved. Eight partners and 8 countries, where in 7 of them the cultural nudges have been tested. In 6 pilots with the cultural nudges that have been tested. What are the results of the project? First of all, I would like to highlight this database that has been created in the framework of the project very quickly, because is quite more easier to explain, especially to no specialized public, of course, what a nudge is and what a cultural nudge is if we give examples. And here you find a large database of examples of nudges, cultural nudges, divided into different typologies and effects that are pursued. It's a very good source of ideas also in order to get the inspiration to design such kind of intervention. But what are the results of the 6 proof of concept that we have implemented in the project? First of all, how the methodologies that we have applied in each pilot, let's say, call them a pilot. We have designed 3 intervention: nudge intervention, cultural nudges intervention, and control group with no intervention. And the impact of the three have been monitored and evaluated through the questionnaire, pre-intervention questionnaire, post-intervention questionnaire, and a follow-up questionnaire after 3 and 6 months after the conclusion of the installation of the intervention, let's say. The data actually is being processed in these days, in the last weeks, let's say. So the result that I will show you are, let's say, very new and what are the results? In all the 6 pilots, the cultural nudges intervention produced a positive effect. I mean, a positive impact in terms of comprehension, understanding of climate changing, and modification of habits and behaviors of people that have been affected, let's say, by the nudges in real life testing. So we can results demonstrate that behavioral nudges combined with cultural and social engagement can be more effective than normal nudges. In our approach, each one of the 6 pilots created and implemented and tested, let's say, cultural nudges related with different senses: smell, sound, touch, taste, visual, let's say, as well as one that mixed all the senses, a multi-sense, let's say, approach. Here you can find the result of the specific results according to the questionnaires of each one of the testing, the proof of concept that we have tested in the different countries. I will not go into the details of each one of them. You can find it also in our web page with all the details. But I want to finish my presentation with the relevance of nudges in public policy. That is the main innovation that the project wants to achieve, and also how we want that nudges will be feasible at long-term level, not only in sense that specific intervention, nudging intervention can be included in public space, like we have done in our pilots, but in order to make nudges approach also used in public policies in a systematic way. So we are clear that the integration of nudging approach is worth. I mean, nudges, cultural nudges work, modify habits, behaviors, and why don't they are not so used in public policies? The use of nudges in public policies, and I don't refer now to cultural nudges, to nudges in general, is more frequent in Central and Northern Europe. One of the examples is the establishment in 2010 of the Behavioral Insight Team that was called also Nudges Unit in the United Kingdom government. This office was in charge of including nudges approach in all the public policies of the government. This is like the best example I could give you. But in Southern Europe, nudges approach is not so frequent in public policies. There are bibliography, of course, but in concrete, there are no a lot of examples of this systematic use of nudges. So it's clear that in order to make possible nudges in the embedding of nudges in public policies, we have to carry out a capacity development process. And what we are doing, and this is the next step of our experience with the cultural nudges, is working with the local authorities. Our work is based on open system approach because we know that capacity of institution or organization is an element of a wider system, and capacity development doesn't depend only by internal elements, but also by external factors. And also we should consider not only the functional aspect, I mean I would say the technical skills that we need to embed nudges into public policies, but we should also consider the political dimension, both internally and at external, both internal and external side. It draw this matrix with four spaces. The internal and functional dimension is probably the most intuitive approach when we work in capacity development. Of course, training, including tools, practical tools to develop cultural nudges, in our case, into the public administration, especially at the local level. That is our focus. But we should also consider the political dimension at the internal level, convincing leadership that nudges, cultural nudges, have to be used is key. Now we have, let's say, reliable data to maintain, to propose this policy option. And at the external level, of course, legal framework is important. Let's say that for this kind of policy proposal, I mean the use of cultural nudges for environmental purposes, we have not found, and we consider that we will not find many, let's say, barriers at legal level. It's not so difficult to especially when we have on board the local authorities to intervene in public spaces and with the nudges. And of course, the external political dimension, where I would like to mention that cultural nudges normally improve public spaces. They are very welcome by general public. In that sense, the pressure from citizens is an interesting factor to be considered, and also the wide alliance that is at the base of the cultural nudges that we have tested. It means alliance between local authority, but also with private sector. Actually, most of the intervention were carried out with the local enterprise, and alliance with citizens that and civil society that they co-designed the intervention. In our case, for instance, in Spain, we worked with schools, with association of parents, with music schools that implemented the nudges that we have tested in Spain. So our approach to make nudges approach embedded in public policies go through all these four dimensions that I have mentioned. To conclude, if you are interested in remain informed regarding the next steps of this testing process regarding cultural nudges, here we have the code to access, and if you want to sign the manifesto, we have published it in the frame of the project, as well as the mailing list and other channels of communication that you can use to be informed about the progress of the project. So thank you very much, and I remain at disposal for any doubt or question.
Thank you, Francesca. I lost connection for a moment, so I guess that you have finalized your presentation, right?
Yes, yes, I have. But of course, if there is any doubt or question, I am at your disposal.
Okay. If not, we can proceed with the final presentation of the day. Our colleague Martin Dan from Panel Business Network, PBN, our partners on the Innovation as a Service project. Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see the slide? Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much. This interesting biological and pedagogical presentation. It was really useful and interesting. And now, last but not least, I would like to um, showcase our initiative, which we have been doing as as a kind of living lab. But I would like to highlight in the beginning that we are not an official living lab, but we are dealing with as a living lab, and I'm going to showcase how we are engaging people, how we are extending our ecosystem in the healthcare domain. So, okay, in the first part of the presentation, just a short overview about our organization. Uh, We are located in the western part of Hungary. Our company is called the Pannon Business Network, and I have been working as a project manager at this company. Uh, we are a center for applied research and training to catalyze added value manufacturing and digital care solutions with involving industry and academic players, enabling digital, sustainable, resilient business transformation. Um, it is a long sentence, but try to make it more understandable. I will go into detail in the upcoming slides. So just overview how we are working. So we have PBN, Partner Business Network, as the so-called mother company, which is responsible for ecosystem development and managing international projects. In the last almost 20 years, we have successfully managed more than 100 international projects in different programs. And the other part of the triangle is our digital innovation hub, which is called MLab. It was established approximately 10 years ago, and it is responsible for, or it is dealing with manufacturing and teaching and learning factory, prototype development, but of course it has different competency areas. But just a short overview in a nutshell. And our third department is the newest. It was established 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4, so rather new. It is called At Home. It is a user test environment and a smart senior room, and is dealing with senior care digitalization. And in this presentation, I'm going to focus on this at-home department where we are engaging senior people and not as a main target group, but apart from them, we have been successfully engaging other target groups as well, which I will show you later. Mainly this presentation is about how to build an ecosystem, a successful ecosystem around the health domain. Just This slide is about the international players with whom we have been working with. Um, some key players from the international area. So, for example, we have a digital innovation hub, okay, locally, but we have been working with other digital innovation hubs to support our, to extend our competencies and learn from them. So it is a kind of exchange of experience. We have a connectivity, a connection with a health ecosystem, for example, this ECH Alliance, which is a EU level health-related ecosystem. We have a good connection with other cities in the Intelligent City Center program, and we have also access to innovation pool and experts in the EIT, European Institute of Technology domain. We have a direct connectivity with the data platform, with this Big Data Value Association. We have a partnership, a good and a long partnership with leading science institutions, for example, from Fraunhofer IWU from Germany, but we have a good partnership with other such institutions as well. And we have a cascade funding information point. It is the I4MS domain. But from a local and regional point of view, our local ecosystem, local um players are playing a more important role. And from the beginning, I would like to highlight the municipality of Szombathely, with whom we have a very good relationship. We have been working together for a while. So very good and very constructive relationship with them. We are working together within projects. So they are either direct partners or associated partners. But apart from the project basis, we have been collaborating with them in other areas as well. For example, we have been formulating our the city level strategy, which is called Szombathely 2030. Szombathely is our city with approx 80,000 people, and now this strategy is being updated with the cooperation of with the strong cooperation of the municipality of Szombathely. But apart from them, uh, we have good connection with other players as well in a quadruple helix, as it was mentioned before. So we have good connection with the local universities, for example, the medical university, the local institute, which is based in our city, the technical university, which is not based in our city, but it is based in Budapest, but rather we have still a good connection with them. Of course, it's very self-explanatory, but we have, of course, good connection with our digital innovation hub, the MLab, and we have also very good connection with the local or the regional chamber of commerce and industry, uh, and the social care service provider company, and the other universities, the teacher training university, and the Scientific Association of Engineers. So mm, in this group, we have been working together to to prepare to formalize the strategy, the Szombathely 2030 strategy, which I have mentioned before. And now we have we are in an updating phase, so we are updating and extending the strategy, and in order to do so, or in order to facilitate this process, we regularly organize meetings with these players, where they can provide how to revise the strategy, and what kind of projects should be or shall be included in this revised strategy. Uh, so we have defined flagship initiatives with the ecosystem players mentioned before. Here you can see some of them. An R&D institution, a test before invest environment, skill development, startups, and so we are focusing on these key areas, and we have been working strongly together. So we are not separated. We are not working separately, but in a group, and it is a successful approach. I can agree. So this was how we are working together with local ecosystem. And now I would like to go on what we have done. We have done a lot of things in the last few years, but I just would like to focus on our uh, health-related issues and how we have established our uh, smart senior room and how we engaged seniors and how we are managing such initiative. In the beginning, so go back to the starting point. 4 years ago, we engaged the people, which was the main approach, as it was mentioned by all of the lecturers before me. So we carried out a qualitative and quantitative research among seniors within the city, and not only the seniors were involved, but their relatives as well. Here you can see some statistics, some numbers, which we gained out of the research. Uh, it turned out that approximately 90% of the interviewed people above 65 years old live alone, uh, and uh, and for example, 10% of the seniors are in a public care system. However, based on the prognosis, this ratio, I mean the elderly population ratio is going to increase in the upcoming few years. Uh, this is not a Hungarian, this is not a somewhat a city level issue. This is a European issue which we have to deal with, and we have to focus on these people, and we have a strong cooperation with the social service care, social service center, and child welfare service who are supporting us how to engage such senior people. So this was how we engaged people without any technology. I mean, without any place. But after the qualitative and quantitative research, and based on the result of the research, we started the concept about our smart senior room, which is a complex microenvironment integrating multiple elements and dedicated to senior people, to formal and informal care providers. And it focuses on individual and infrastructure, and all elements are showcased as a single platform. So all in all, in a nutshell, this is a demonstration environment. This is a training environment for various target groups. This is a test facility, and this is also a prototype development research infrastructure. So what I would like to highlight is that this smart senior room concept was established based on the successful engagement which we carried out before among the senior people, and with the strong collaboration with this uh, social and service center located in our city. And after the concept, this smart senior room was established, so it is now actively working. and we are engaging dozens of elderly people, which I will mention later. Some of the participants of this meeting are part of the direct are the partners of the Innovation Service project, and they had the possibility to visit our smart senior room. So for them, it is easier to 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 understand what I'm talking about. But of course, other people are welcome to visit us. So after the concept, we have defined our product portfolio. We have been examining what kind of devices, gadgets, applications should be integrated based on the research among the seniors. So we have a senior assistance. Some devices belong to the senior assistance group. Some devices belong to the smart home group, and in a horizontal way, some can be considered as a demonstration. So as I've seen in the table, most of the applications are for demonstration purposes. Most of them are for training purposes. Some of them are for test purposes, and a few of them are for research purposes. Uh, so here you can see that how we enlarged the prototype development with large scale testing. So we integrated households with seniors to enable testing in a valid living environment, which is called or which can be considered as a living lab. So we contacting them, we visiting of seniors in households are ensured. The medical device testing is also feasible via external quality control company with a pharmaceutical experience. We also fulfilled an MDR training for internal staff member, and we are also dealing with and carrying out data science and data visualization and integration uh, with the team internally. And of course, local doctors are available to be involved, and therefore, a strong international connectivity is granted. And how we have establish this senior product demo and test environment. So as I have mentioned before, 2 slides before, this is a multi-device environment with approx 50 digital applications in different fields. As you can see here, this demonstration, training, test, and research, some of them for senior assistants, some of them for a smart home. Our Smart Senior Room or at home department has been accredited on EU level, which is the only Hungarian accredited health reference site, which we are proud of. And we are also committed to support the team, the internet team, with to extend the portfolio to and the expertise. And here on this slide, here you can see some elderly people, but this is not the full group. This is just a few of them who are actively participating in our occasions, which we are continuously organizing for them. We are continuously organizing different programs for them, and a lot of presentations are held either by the elderly people who are directly involved in this mm, in this engagement process, or external people also hold presentation to to for these elderly people. And within or in the last 4 years, we have managed to engage approx 60 seniors and this number is continuously extending. So it is a very good company. It is a very good it is a very good way to attract people, and if we are continuously, so to say, disseminating the opportunities, so it is still open to join the group, and they are all of these, or based on the feedback of these people, they like they very much like this group. They like and very uh, um, yeah, they like the programs which we are organizing for them, and they are directly involved in product validation and testing. So products have been tested already, so therefore this validation process is also ongoing. And here you can see the technology, uh, uh, what we are using for and the test devices. So we have a dedicated interview space. Some of you from the partners saw it in February. So we have a special monitoring room. We have an emotion observation, a psychologist involved. So it is a high-level research and testing. And as I have mentioned before, we have also a data analytics team who are continuously analyzing their data in an advanced form. So the elderly people like these tests very much. And apart from the ones mentioned before, we are also focusing on emotion detection with facial monitoring, with breathing monitoring, and with EEG monitoring. Not all of the seniors are involved in these testing, but just some of them who are also willing to participate, and who we are selected. So in conclusion, I can say that our involvement our engagement with the ecosystem players, so with the municipality, with the universities, with the chamber of commerce, with all of these social care welfare actor, and directly with the senior people are very successful, uh, and we have been working together successfully for a while, and everybody is appreciating this approach, and therefore we also consider this approach, this living lab concept, a very uh, successful and very useful way to engage the ecosystem players and the senior people. So this was my presentation about our smart senior room, and our group is called, I haven't mentioned before, our group is called the Silver Club, which is continuously uh, the number is continuously extending, and we are nearly or there are nearly 60 people in the group. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin, for this presentation. I was personally present during the study visit to PBN premises, and when we saw everything that live,
Yeah.
and it was very impressive what you are working on, in the context of the living lab, and as you said in your presentations, is in your presentation is so this supportive environment. So it seems that you already have most important pillars of this environment, which is needed for living lab. So you're practically already a living lab.
Mm.
So your decision of becoming certified or not becoming certified is
Yeah.
more like a strategic
Yeah,
decision rather than just
exactly,
checking
exactly. Exactly. This is still under strategic level decision. We haven't decided it yet, but as you mentioned, yes, we are working as a non-official living lab, but in order to have the certificate, we would follow the steps mentioned by the previous lecturers. Yeah.
Any questions from what is left from the audience? Maybe some general impressions on the training session, whether primarily for the PBN maybe or for a kick, as they are involved in the pilot, they will be working on it.
For us, it was definitely very helpful to see everything, let's say, the theoretical background, the process, how it should be established, also the benefits or, let's say, pros and cons of establishing living labs, and also several good examples like the circular graph from PBN and also Greenpoint from ITC. So I think now we have a clearer picture how to proceed in order to develop or establish a living lab. What I am taking from this meeting as the primary message is that everything depends on the people, that we need to have a strong stakeholder group with where people understand each other and respects each other. So I think this will be the main thing that we will focus on, and building follow-up activities upon this mutual trust.
And also this issue, I would like to raise out this issue of market potential, as we saw in the Silver Club example, is basically you have now very supportive environment for the companies to use your living lab, because with using of Liva, they have the approach to the citizens, they have the approach of the target group. They could test they could work with you and they could test devices and develop specific devices. So you're becoming a point on the map, which is also from the commercial point of view really really interesting. And then we talked about the sustainability, how it is important to ensure some income. And also presentation from Mr. Filippi, Francesco, about the potential of the nudges. So it's also about working with the policy level policy makers on recognition of potential of the nudges in terms of general policies or resolving some crucial societal issues. It's something which is I mean, we will follow it, and I hope it will be a subject of some future projects involving maybe our organizations. Okay, so any final thoughts? We are almost 4 hours. I think that we are now really bummed with the information, and this event is recorded. So something which is maybe most interesting for you, something maybe you have missed, will be available to you on the IaaS Academy, so Innovation as a Service Academy, which we developed within this project. So it will remain as a legacy of the project, and then hopefully as a technical assistance to you in actually developing living labs on the short term or on longer term basis. I would like to thank all of you, especially our lecturers, especially our experts and lecturers, which presented the topic of living lab from their own specific perspective. And hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Just an admin issue, Goran. You mentioned that the presentations and every material will be available. Please just collect the presentations from lecturers and please circulate it so we can check it afterwards. Thank you very much.
Yes, we will do the archives of it and including the video. So
yeah, okay.
you will have the access to it.
Okay. Great. Okay.
Thank you
Have a
very
nice
much.
afternoon.
Have a nice afternoon.
Bye.